Starting to learn a little bit about how organisms get their energy, or like what kinds of organisms are called when they get their energy. So, on page 10 in our notebook, our new learning target is I can distinguish between ways in which organisms obtain their energy. So, our first important term from this lesson today is producer. Say it with me, producer. Producer is an organism that can make its own food. A producer is usually a plant. I kind of remember this by thinking that producer starts with P, and so does plant. Producer, plant, plant, producer, plant, producer. Try it with me. Plant, producer. Good job. All right. Our second term today is consumer. So say it with me. Consumer. A consumer is an organism that obtains energy by feeding on other organisms. All right, consumer can't make its own energy. It has to eat other things that can make their own energy. Next term, decomposer. Say it with me. Decomposer. A decomposer is an organism that breaks down larger chemicals from dead organisms and returns them to the soil, air, or water. You learned about this in the video. There are three types of consumers. The first type is an herbivore. It eats only plants. The second type is a carnivore. It eats only other animals. But insects count as like meat. Insects can also be herbivores or carnivores. So it depends on what they eat. Like if an insect eats another insect, like a spider eating an ant, then you have a spider that's a carnivore. If you have an insect like a caterpillar eating a leaf, then you have an herbivore. Okay, so insects count as organisms too. Don't forget to put those in your thoughts when you're thinking about organisms. The third kind is an omnivore, and an omnivore eats both plants and animals. So most humans are omnivores. We eat meat and we eat vegetables and fruits, and so we are omnivores. We eat everything. I kind of remember that because an O looks like an open mouth, eats everything. Put it all in your mouth, right? I hope you eat everything too. Maybe you're a picky eater. But we have like vegetarians or vegans, and those people choose whether or not they eat meat or vegetables, right? So I kind of call myself a choositarian because I can choose what I want to eat, vegetables or meat. Actually, no, I'm just kidding. There's no such thing as a choositarian. Don't go home and tell your parents you're a choositarian. Okay, you're actually an omnivore. You can eat both meat and vegetables and fruits. Okay? The last type of organism that we're actually going to talk about just briefly is called a scavenger. And there are some amazing scavengers. So, scavenger, say it with me, scavenger. A scavenger is an organism that feeds on dead organisms. Usually it's a carnivore, okay? And a couple of them that I can think of, if you've ever been driving down the road, well, of course you don't drive because you're not old enough, but if you drive down the road and you have seen some dead animals on the side, a scavenger is actually an opossum. And if you know about an opossum, you know that what they do is they play dead when they get scared. So they pretend that they're dead. And so when they get scared and they're crossing the road, they get scared, they play dead, and then the car hits them. And then you have dead opossum on the road. Well, scavengers come and eat that, like birds, like crows. You might see a crow in the road that's eating, or a raven that is eating or pecking at the dead opossum. So those things help remove dead organisms also. Otherwise, we'd have like dead bodies of things that died. I mean, even animals die of old age out in the woods and in nature. And so what happens to those bodies? Well, scavengers eat the big parts, and then decomposers eat the small parts. And then that kind of cycles the energy in an ecosystem. All right, make sure your notebook looks like my notebook.